Why is there so much dispute about the veracity of the Bible if so much of it is steeped in history that's worldwide?
That's another very good question. Believe it or not, there are many, many, many historians who deny the history. So, for example, about 100 years ago, not 90 years ago, the majority of technical ancient history historians who were liberals denied that there was alphabetical writing at the time of Moses. So therefore Moses couldn't have written the Pentateuch. Now since then there's been a lot more archaeology and we found all kinds of alphabetical writings. So nobody says that anymore. But that was the dominant view amongst liberal scholars for many, many decades. And today there are what are called minimalist historians who think that the accounts of Abraham and so on in the Bible are just mythology. They doubt that Abraham ever lived. There are some, that's 2000 BC, there are some who argue that it's not at all clear that David lived, even though there are lots of historical archaeological artifacts from that period. So it's part of a systemic skepticism about God disclosing himself in history. All of the most radical liberals belong to what is sometimes called the school of philosophical naturalism. That is, all that is out there is matter and energy and space-time. There's no reflection of God. And so they have to reinterpret everything as being non-miraculous and have to explain away the miraculous and have to explain away God. And sometimes they make outrageously bad claims that later archaeology overturns. Do you see? That was the case with Mosaic writing. So because the Bible is so tied up with world history, it means that if you're going to doubt the Bible, pretty soon you got to doubt a whole lot of world history too. So really good introductions to the Bible, whether the Old Testament or the New, deal with a lot of things like that. On the New Testament side, Doug Moo and I wrote a book called An Introduction to the New Testament that deals with a lot of things like that on the New Testament side. And there's similarly books like that on the Old Testament side that answer a lot of those sorts of questions. So I have friends, for example, that are first-class scholars amongst the Egyptologists. In other words, they know all of the ancient sources from Egypt. And they know, there are others that are Assyrian experts, Assyriologists they're called. And they know all the sources from Assyria. And then they can show how many parallels there are between that literature and biblical literature and so on. So those sorts of things go on all the time. And at the end of the day, what you're dealing with is a form of deep-seated unbelief that owes a lot of allegiance to philosophical materialism. That's cheerful, isn't it? It's amazing what unbelief will do